Bonjour tout le monde, mesdames et messieurs, chers amis, chers membres de l'Alliance Française de Seattle. Hello everyone. My name is Alexandra Dorka. I'm the director of the Alliance Française de Seattle. And it is my very big pleasure and honor to welcome you all for our first online talk. Today we have a very special guest. Michael Sobel is a Seattle-based photographer. He's a long-time member of l'Alliance Française de Seattle. He takes classes and very successful ones. And he's here to share with us his passion about French language, France, and many others, especially photography. The ones who know the Alliance, they know that we display very proudly his work at l'Alliance, and that we even have something here at my home. I hope you can see Michel's, my favorite. It's entitled Liberté. And before I invite him to talk, I would like to acknowledge the exceptional work of the Alliance's instructors since the COVID crisis hit Seattle, and the Alliance's staff, Diane Lelay, Quentin Cariou, they are here with us, and they will take care during the talk they will take care, to chat with you, to take note of your questions. So thank you very much for being here. Michel, je te donne la parole.
Okay, so it's really wonderful to be here today, to be invited. I'm a little nervous, especially since my wife gave me a haircut just yesterday in preparation for this, but I'm sure we're going to have a good time, and I'm honored to be invited to share this. Let me start by sharing my screen. Okay, share screen. There we go. So you can look at some pictures while I'm talking. There we go. So a little bit about me first. I'd studied French in high school. In those days, that was the language, that was the foreign language that you learned. And I think somewhere in the back of my brain, some of the rudiments of French were still there, because we really enjoyed the vacations that we took in France. And these trips reawakened for me a certain love for the language and the people of France. And after a few trips, I had felt a desire to go deeper, to move from looking at this country and this people and the places from the outside, and finding a way to get inside. And it was only when I recently retired that I returned to one of my strongest outside interests all my life, and that is photography. And it seemed to me that photography and France and the French, it was a natural combination, especially since the French practically invented photography. So it was then, as I began to do some research, that I stumbled upon the Rencontres d'art. And this is a very large international photo festival that's held every year in Arles, in the south of France. This is a typical street in the central village of Arles, with its tiny little buildings and apartments. So this international festival is in July and August, but what I discovered was that they also offer workshops and photography courses in the spring and in the fall, and those are animated and led by very distinguished European photographers. So it was in the spring of 2017, in April, that I took the plunge and signed up for and joined this course that was led by Stéphane Lavoué. I was the only native English speaker in the class of 11 other classmates, but most of them were well educated and fluent in English as well. The first day of the whole workshop, which lasted a week, was very nervous for me because each of us, one after another, had to get up and present to the group a little portfolio, a sampling of our photographs, and talk a little about what our goals were for the week. But that went well, especially since I had been taking some courses at the Alliance in preparation for this, and I'd even practiced at home before the big day. In any case, mornings, this was the kind of routine throughout the week. Mornings were spent with some training and education about photographic techniques. And later in the morning, we would go out and shoot, whether whatever our theme or project or interests were. And the staff at the Rencontres were very helpful in giving us access to people and to places. They had a huge binder of businesses and activities, and they said to me one day, well, here's a baker and a butcher who would love to have you come photograph them. And so I jumped at the opportunity. And as a result, I spent several days, mornings and afternoons, kind of embedded in the back, it's called the labo of this patisserie in central Arles, and chatting up the bakers and the pastry chefs and talking with them as they worked furiously. I also went to a butcher shop and actually got to see how they make sausage, which was pretty cool, and photographed them, and spending time with them in a very casual, informal way gave me a deeper respect for their professions, for their artisanship. And they would share with me their complaints about taxes and business problems and tell me about their families. And so it was more than just an assignment of taking pictures. It really was an immersion in their lives and what they were like. In the afternoons, we'd return to the center where there were digital setups for us to develop our film. And we'd take breaks and chat amongst ourselves about photography or other things. It was a very convivial group. So we would go out for drinks at the end of the day. I was kind of the pet mascot, first being the only American and then being older than most of them. But we really fit in. We all would text each other in group texts on our phones and say, oh, we're going out for a drink tonight. Who wants to go? Also, when we were on location sometimes, we'd find a good place to have lunch and we'd kind of congregate and all have lunch together and then spread out again to shoot and to photograph. At the end of the week, we put together a kind of portfolio of our selected shots, and each one of us had a little exposition in this big room, and then the whole group of faculty and staff went out for a grand celebration dinner. I was really inspired, particularly by the theme of tradesmen and artisans, and I brought that back with me from France, and was able to find that here too, in Seattle. And I've continued this theme of more or less formal portraits of working people, artisans, professionals, tradesmen. By then, having returned to Seattle, my photography had moved into a new realm too, which was bookmaking. Because I was very attracted to the manual arts. I'm a retired surgeon, so I like to do things with my hands. And making kind of one-of-a-kind or small edition books of my original photographs was very attractive to me. And so I thought, well, gosh, this is kind of logical. Maybe I could study bookmaking in France as well. So sure enough, the next spring, I signed up for another photography course at the Rencontres d'Art. But I also, with some research, found all sorts of resources for bookmaking and bookbinding. As it turns out, France has a grand and long tradition of bookbinding and bookmaking. And there are thousands of bookbinders and bookmaking shops all over France, many of whom offer short and longer courses for amateurs. It's a popular pastime amongst lay people in France as well. So with a little bit of research, I found a woman who had a workshop and offered courses right there in Arles. So back to back, I had a photography workshop, and then I met and spent a week with Madame Mireille Portry. And she was a vivacious, delightful bookmaker who in our first few days, it was almost like a one-on-one internship. I had brought with me the sheets of photographs that I wanted to make into a book, and she instructed me and trained me in the techniques for binding them together and making a cover and making a complete book of it. And later in the week, two other students joined us, and the three of us learned a number of different book techniques and book styles. And this was a different group, a more intimate. The woman in red was a retired veterinarian, and the fellow in blue worked at the hospital morgue, the local hospital morgue. But what we shared was a love of books and an interest in learning more and acquiring skills in bookmaking. She had all the tools and was a very experienced bookmaker, and step by step worked us through the different stages of sewing and binding and gluing and cutting and so forth. And these are some of the final books that we put together. Some closing thoughts that I wanted to share with you. The first is to encourage all of you that really anyone can do this. It's not it's not difficult, and the experience each time was very welcoming. Whatever is your passion, really, you can probably find it in a French-speaking country. Cooking, painting, music, archaeology, photography, of course. And the rewards are you get to meet and befriend regular French people with whom you already share an interest. You also get to stay in one place for a while and get to know the rhythm of a locale. For my own photography, it gave me a new vision of what was previously a foreign country, a view from the inside rather than from the outside. And if you do your research on French websites, if you can find opportunities that are beyond those that are designed just for an American audience. And finally, I'd like to really thank and praise the Alliance Française de Seattle. It's really a treasure here in Seattle. They've continuously offered courses really suited to my needs, as well as cultural events and even some private lessons, which I took in preparation for my first stage or workshop in France. So I'll stop here and see if you all have any questions. And by all means, contact me outside of this if you want to talk more about photography or France. Thanks very much. And thank you, Alexandra.
Merci, Michel. Thank you very much. So don't forget, you can send your questions in the Q&A sections. Diane sent you the email. Because you were, talking about all these workshops, we have a question here. How exactly are you looking for them? I mean, okay. I mean, I know you're passionate about photography, but how do you know? How do you find them? Because some are like language schools here or in France. Some are better than the others, and it looks like you found the best ones. So where are you looking for them? How?
Yeah, it's I think you either need to know a little French, or you need a little help from someone who understands or speaks a little French. But if you search for French words, you'll get very different responses than if you've searched for American words. So for example, the word of bookbinding in French is reliure. And so there's no mistaking that. I mean, if you search for that word, you get lots of sites in France that have to do with bookbinding. But if you search for bookbinding in France, you may get American programs that bring Americans to France to study bookbinding. So it takes a while, but it can be done. I mean, this is the internet. Look, we're talking to each other from miles away,
Yeah, and it's very interesting because I have here 3 questions. They are very much in the same spirit. We already discussed. I discussed with you about that, and because I found your work very anthropological. And it really reminds me, I don't know if you saw it, Agnès Varda's Visage Village.
Yes.
And this is exactly the feeling I have. And actually, we have 3 persons here asking more or less, it's a little bit the same thing. So basically, they would like to know how much, you aim to take a picture, so how much you guide your props are guided, or you just let yourself discover.
Yeah, I was very strongly influenced by the first workshop I took with the photographer Stéphane Lavoué, and what he taught me, or at least he showed me, I haven't learned it, I haven't really acquired that skill, but he talked about in English, he said, transcribing your emotions. It was, en français, c'était retranscrire les émotions. And that's what he aimed in his portraits, was not so much to have a certain goal of portraying the person in a certain way, but through the photograph to express your own feelings and reactions. And I hope my photographs show a feeling of respect and appreciation of the subjects.
Oh, they do, and I think it's really, that's why I found it very interesting, because the people here on, in the Q&A, they have the same feeling. And what something else that was really impressive, because, well, you are an American, you're not French, but however, it's very interesting. That's why I always think about Agnès Varda. You are not like a foreigner in France taking pictures, and this is, I think, absolutely magical. It's as if it's your country, your people. Someone here saying your photos are so natural. I feel as I'm walking on the street, you are about to photograph, and this is it. So
very kind. That's very kind. But I mean, it's funny, but the experience of immersing myself in different locale in France has helped me here in Seattle to be a better photographer here too. So I've profited in many ways. Yeah.
We have something really, really cool here. So someone said, very interesting topic, and thank you for taking the time. And then the person's asked, when will the Alliance Française de Seattle offer a bookbinding seminar or course with you as an expert? And actually, that's an excellent suggestion. And I would like, I don't know how do you remember when you?
Oh yes, I gave you the book.
Yeah. So when he went after his first seminar, I think he created this book in France. So he came back at l'Alliance. I was not a director at the time. I was your instructor.
Yeah, you were my teacher, one of my first teachers.
So it's absolutely superb.
That's
do you? I mean, I know it's difficult now to go back, but do you plan to continue this kind of projects over there or here in Seattle even?
I hope to. I mean, I can't even go to the movies right now here in Seattle. So, and I'm old enough that I'm being cautious and conservative. So we'll see. I mean, it's very much. I think we're all living our lives now, day to day, and just savoring today.
Mm-hmm. What comes first for you? Another question, very interesting one. The concept for a book or a collection of photographs that define the concept?
Yes, I have to say it happens both ways.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time I spend is taking photographs of just whatever I want to photograph. Mm-hmm. And in those cases, I wait for the photographs to kind of come together and to tell me what they want to be. And then there are other cases where I really start with a clear theme or project. Like last summer, I went to a lot of rodeos and took portraits of cowboys. And so that was, from the start, I had this view. But I think more often, it kind of just emerges from the pictures that I've been taking, and they talk to me and they say, I want to go along with this picture here. And yeah.
That's it's like a question about children, you know, whom do you like most? But what do you prefer? Do you prefer taking pictures of people or of landscapes?
I would say my favorite pictures are pictures that create an emotional response. Mm. And sometimes that can be, it can be a very strong emotional response to a landscape or to a portrait or people. But the quality I'm most interested in is a photograph that makes people want to look at it again and to have some visceral reaction to it.
Mm-hmm. We have a more technical question here, Michelle. So what exactly did the classes or the direction from the instructor consist of? So what exactly you were learning? I think in both.
Yes. So I think for the most part, the instruction was not at a basic technical level. I think the expectation, I mean, there were some classmates of mine whose technical skills and knowledge were pretty low, and the instructor would kind of help them along. But I think in both of the workshops, you were arriving with an adequate technical expertise, and more of the training and critique and work was spent on the artistic side, color and frame and subject and matching together a series of images and things like that.
Do you, so someone is assuming you use a digital camera?
Yeah,
and the person would like to know if you ever use the old cameras that still use film?
Yes, both. For these workshops, and I think any photography workshop that you would go to anywhere in the world now, it's digital, because you have to have the fast turnaround. You know, people can't spend days in the darkroom developing their film. But yes, I have a digital camera, but I also have one of these old-fashioned, it's called a chambre noire. In French. It's a big black bellows, and the film goes in the back, and you put a black cloth over your head and focus on the ground. So I like both. I like both.
So one last question. Someone wants to know if you bind all of your books and if you ever formally publish them.
Most of the books that I've made in a edition of 5 or 10. But lately I've gotten interested in maybe having 2 avenues, to have a commercial printing of maybe 50 or 100 copies that would be abordable, would be approachable for most people, and then maybe 5 or 6 handmade books with the same content. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I don't know if you already saw if in the list we have learners of L'Alliance. When we had that's why we have his work displayed, because we organized an exhibition last year, and we published a small catalog. Of course, it doesn't compare to what he offered me a couple of 2 or 3 years ago. So I would like to thank you a lot for
thank you.
First talk. Thank you everyone for being here.